Hey there, CJ Math students, and welcome to today's lesson. We're going to start and continue our unit on statistics, but start learning about probability. So in order to do today's lesson, you're going to need to log into STMath, and I'm going to show you how to complete some of these levels. So very first level is all about basic probability, whether or not you can think something happened. So what is the probability of selecting B? B being kind of the 25% chance of this full circle and G being the 75% chance. Well, if B is between probable and improbable, it is more likely that you're going to select G, so it is less likely that you're going to select B. So that's why it's improbable. So you'll do that. They'll show you, it is possible to land on B, it's possible to land on G. They'll do a whole bunch of simulations for you. And eventually, over time, you will see that it is more likely that it's going to land on G than B. So basically, all you're doing here is trying to say, okay, improbable, probable is the same thing as unlikely and likely. So what is the likelihood of selecting P? As you can see, P is much more prevalent than B, so P is definitely likely. Now, as these simulations occur, if you're a guy that has already done these levels of STMath that I'm asking you to do today, great, awesome job. Finish up this Edpuzzle video once we're done here and email me the code word. You get a little bonus for doing work ahead of time. That's how life works sometimes. It starts to get a little bit trickier as you keep on going on. What is the likelihood of selecting G? Again, since G is the most shaded out of all three options, it is likely. Not by much, but it is more likely than the others. As you can see, it can land on B, it can land on P, but as they do it, the one that it lands on the most is likely. What's the probability of selecting G? So as you can see here, Y is definitely the most probable because it takes up the most space. So it is improbable that it would land on G. Not likely. And it's possible. The nice thing about probability is, like, if I were to give you these odds, it is possible in just one chance that you could land on G, or in this case, one chance that you could land on P. But over time, one event does not affect another event in probability if they're not related. And so a spinner is an example of what we call independent events, one event not affecting another event. And so if I told you I had a spinner and it landed on G 5 times in a row, is it more likely or less likely to land on G on the 6th time? You couldn't say one way or the other, right? The probability of these guys stay the same every single time, independent of what has happened before. So, like, this is, what is the probability of landing on P? P is a really small section of the pie, so it's improbable, right? It may land on P the very first time. You have no idea, right? But that doesn't mean over time that it's not going to land on other parts of the sections, right? So as you can see, it lands more likely on G than any of them all other ones because G is the largest one. Again, what's the likelihood of selecting G? G is one of the smaller slices out of all these slices, so it is unlikely. So that's what this kind of first level is all about, and that's what all these levels will be about kind of in this first bubble. So what I'm going to ask you to do, as Gigi moves up here, to complete all the problems in level 1. The problems in level 2 look like this, which outcome is probable, as in more likely. You just click on the one that is more likely. I'm going to let this kind of filter itself out here, and then I'll go to level 3 and show you what those problems look like. But again, when it's probable or likely, you're looking for the one that is has the bigger section. Improbable or unlikely, it's the smaller section. Level 3 problems look like this. So you got a jar, and it's like pretend you're pulling a marble out of this jar. What is the likelihood of selecting G? Well, you see there's only one G there. There's only one green, so it's probably unlikely if I randomly put my hand in there. It's not impossible, right? I could grab that green marble, but it's probably more likely I'm going to grab that purple marble than the green marble. As you see, the machine puts the marble back every single time, so the probability remains the same, right? If I were to remove one of those purple marbles and leave everything else the same, the probabilities would be changing. What's the probability of selecting P? It's, again, improbable because you have way more blue marbles than you do purple marbles. And lastly, level 4, you're going to get problems like this again. What's likely, unlikely, Which one is unlikely here? Well, you have way more blues than you do Y, so Y is unlikely. Let's see if I can't get to a trickier problem here. Here's an example that seems a little bit more tricky, which is least likely. So you want to pick the marble that pops up the fewest times. And so Y only pops up twice. Green you see pops up 6 times. Blue is a lot more than that. So least likely would be Y. Another way of saying improbable. This problem says which is most probable. So again, you're looking for the marbles that appear the most. That's obviously the green, although the blue is pretty close. You have 6 blues, but 2, 4, 6, 8, it looks like 9. I've counted correct green, so obviously that's the one that occurs the most, so it's the most probable. And finally, which is the least likely here, you'll notice 3 blues, 4 purples, looks like 5 greens, so obviously it looks like the blues take the win on that one because they're the least likely. The most probable in that case looks like would be the yellows, just by small margin over the greens there. But those are the 4 levels that I would like you to complete. You'll know that you are done when GG goes to the top just like this, and you have completed all 4 of these levels. They're all green. And then if you were to go on to the next bubble, you would be working on these problems with this spinner, but we will hold off on that. And if you want to do that and get a head start on some of the other work, go for it. But that's it. Make sure to email me your code word when you are done.